What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning into the Texas COVID Connect podcast. I'm Josh, your host today, and today we got Arnav, Lisa, and Sujit ready to talk about our first big topic. So today, our big issue is racial and socioeconomic equity. We'll be talking about how communities have been affected during COVID, but more importantly, how this has also spread to a lot of other aspects of life. So let's just start with the term systemic inequality. I also hear systemic racism a lot this past year, So these words have been used a lot on social media this past year. And Arnav, what do you think these words mean to you? And what have you seen this past year that might show some evidence of the inequality in our country?
Just off the bat, I don't have a lot of numbers or any like straight hard facts right off the bat to tell you guys or anything that's solidified. So I'm just going to talk more about my experience and like the question is what it means to me. But yeah, of course, this last year has been very difficult across a number of aspects, but one of the most highlighted ones was the unarmed killings of Black individuals such as Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, amongst many more. And I think a big thing that I've seen with these in comparison to other events like school shootings that have happened is the rhetoric used to address them and the rhetoric used specifically by the system. We see words associated with people of color, thugs, criminals, rapists, very negative words with a big negative connotation. And then when we see maybe violence occurring with people not of white people who are white, you see words like, mentally unstable, bad childhood, or something, a rhetoric that is almost serves as an excuse for their actions. And when I see these things, that is really the inequality that the system brings, in my eyes, is that you're holding people who have committed similar actions to a different standard. You're excusing one and criminalizing the other, whereas both of them, I believe, should be held to the same standard. I mean, literally yesterday, we had people freaking storm the Capitol building, people who are white, people not of color. And what did we hear? We didn't see any tear gas. We didn't see any backlash. I mean, they got to the Capitol building. Whereas when there was looting and rioting after the Black Lives Matter movement, which I'm not saying is excusable, that's also just as wrong. Violence in protest of any sort is incorrect because it doesn't lead to change. There was, the reaction was huge. People were up in arms. There was tear gas, lots of backlash. So that inequality within the standard, I believe, is the systemic inequality we see in this country.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also, with this pandemic too, this past year, I think we've definitely seen some of this inequality spread into our healthcare system.
Absolutely.
I know the CDC has posted a lot of information about that. And I know recently they published some statistics showing some disproportionalities in healthcare, especially in the Black, American Indian, and Hispanic populations, right? We see that those populations are 3.7 times, and 4.1 times more likely to be hospitalized by COVID than compared to like a white non-Hispanic person, right? So COVID exposure really is just like a mix of a lot of socioeconomic factors, where you work, how many people you encounter in that workplace, the work environment, healthcare access, and a lot of more things. So Lisa, why do you think this statistic, along with many others, is so? And what do you think the root problem is? Kind of what Arnav was kind of talking about earlier.
Yeah, so for the statistics that the CDC has posted, it's really saddening and frustrating to see that there's such a huge disproportion between different races and different ethnicities. And I think part of the reason why Black people and Hispanics and Native Americans have such high rates of hospitalizations is because they don't have the access to proper health care in the first place, and they don't have access to those safety precautions that more privileged people who have very stable, maybe high earning jobs in the US do. And so I think it's statistically proven that people who work minimum wage tend to not really have health insurance, or if they do, it's not very, it doesn't really cover a lot. They tend to not have enough money, not have enough funds to pay for hospital procedures, even if they do need them. And so I think that is a huge reason why it contributes to like the rising numbers of cases among these specific ethnicities and races. And another reason why is because these people work in minimum wage jobs, right? They work in customer service, they work in retail, they work in food services. And these same people who don't have good health insurance are the same people who are most likely to come in contact with COVID-19, which is really, really sad to think about, that they have the highest percentage of exposure, but have the least amount of insurance and safety in place for them. And I think it really just kind of results from the society that we've built over the past couple centuries since America has been formed. And I think going on in the future, I think this should be a pretty big issue that the rest of America needs to address.
Yeah, for sure. I think a big problem with our country, and in my opinion, just the world in general, is everything is so divided, you know? I think it's undeniable that regardless of where you live, there are a lot of like caste, you know, like class differences. If you look at like stadium seating, the rich people get to sit in a box and everyone else just sits on the outer edges of the stadium. If you look at neighborhoods, I know when I drive through Houston, and I can drive from an extremely rich neighborhood to a poor one in like less than a minute. And there's like a clear line. Right when you cross like a highway, it's all of a sudden just poor people, you know? And you see people living on the streets, and then you drive back the other way and you see like these huge mansions and houses. So there's like a clear line, and at the surface, there might not seem to be like a fix to this, because like there's so many factors, right? The kids who are raised in these poor areas have less tax funding, less resources, they have worse schools and teachers, less healthcare. So just like a variety of problems that's really just rooted in the infrastructure that have led them to believe, many of them to believe that maybe they can't make it out of this cycle, or, you know, go to college, live a life outside of poverty, you know, get in the middle class, for example. So Sushi, what do you think about this? And what are your opinions on the problems of just like these inequalities in our country? So like, for example, what resources have you been given that you believe have given you maybe like an advantage, or like given you some like, to have been able to let you succeed, and that maybe someone else might not have? And would you have been able to succeed without these resources?
That's a good question, because I think where we live is definitely a lot more balanced with racism. There's not many racial issues where we live, and we're really blessed to be in a place like that. But that's the problem, is it's not like that around the country. And there's so many people without the access to any of these resources, and they're really not getting the access because of their color. And that's the problem. Like you could see in places like in Maryland and like so many different places. And it's just as I was able to get many resources to pursue whatever I wanted, and I wasn't hindered by race at all in my entire life. Of course, when I was young, there was like some bullying, but that was like very minor compared to like what other people are going through. And so it's definitely important to have like those kind of those resources for everyone. And I don't think I would have had the same success without having any of the freedom I had. And really what I think about systemic racism is the root problem is not that people are racist. It's not like just everyone is racist. It's not like half the country is racist. It's really that like 98 of the, like maybe 90% of the people just don't acknowledge, or 90% of the people that are kind of on the other side just don't acknowledge that racism is the problem. They just think that, hey, there are many colored people getting really good jobs, and that's not a problem. But the only problem is those colored people are actually exceptions. Like if you say that 90% of colored people are not able to get a job, then those are the 10% of people that are actually like getting really good jobs. And that's a real problem, because it's just like it's just only some people are able to get the resources. And it's just like that's like the main issue of that. And I think we are on a track to fix these issues. There is light at the end of the tunnel, but it's going to take a long time and a lot of effort. We need everyone to acknowledge that it's a problem. And I think that the point where systemic racism is gone is that whenever there's a colored person in a really good position, we're not going to even care if they're a colored person or not. It's just a person in a good position. That's it. And like yeah, right now like we have like all of this like, oh, you're the first, that person's the first Black vice president, that person's the first Black president of America, and that it in itself is an improvement. But the fact that we have to acknowledge that shows that we're still extremely far away from making true progress. And I think with systemic racism, it happens just a lot in people's daily lives too. If you look at George Floyd's and Breonna Taylor's incidents and many other incidents that haven't reached that same like height, but those people, they've been hurt and killed and lost their lives for really not much purpose at all. It's just that police like just randomly just went in, and then it kind of just got taken over, and they just did some things that they didn't need to do. And if you look at Kyle Rittenhouse, that's like a completely different scenario. He actually killed people, and whether the issue is complex or not, like whether it's his fault or he's innocent or not, he still hurt other people, and he took days to get prosecuted while the other people got killed in like a matter of minutes. And that's just it's definitely heartbreaking to see that happen, and it's something that we have to acknowledge. And otherwise, we're probably not going to make any move, and we're not going to make any steps forward. And yeah, I think that's really my opinion on it. So I think we can head in the right direction, but it will take time and it will take a lot of hard work.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I really like what you said about comparing like George Floyd and Breonna Taylor to like Kyle Rittenhouse. I think also on those three people, right? I think it's also very divided with how our nation thinks about them. Some people believe Breonna Taylor and George Floyd are like, I guess they sort of view them as heroes now, because like we're like martyrs even for, they died because of like some injustices in the police system. Whereas the other side, they view Kyle Rittenhouse as like a hero for standing up to some riots, right? So I think our country is very divided on that, and I want to read you guys two different articles I found. One I would say is more liberal, and one I would say is more conservative, just to kind of see where our country is at. So first I'm going to read one from the Augusta Chronicle, and here we go. So in summary, this is not a racist country. There will be individuals who harbor racist thoughts, but by and large, this is a free country for all. You have to take individual responsibility to develop a skill and gather knowledge to join the middle class, as many have done, as outlined above. Anecdotally, I see minorities in every walk of life: doctors, nurses, cashiers, teachers, etc., taking their places in society. Further, I see no hint of animosity between the races as they interact with each other. Quite the opposite. I see respect, courtesy, and smiles. We are one America. And here is an article from Business Insider. Extensive academic research and data collected by the federal government and researchers have documented numerous ways that Black Americans experience life in the United States differently from their white counterparts. It's called systemic racism because it's ingrained in nearly every way people move through society, in the policies and practices at institutions like banks, schools, companies, government agencies, and law enforcement. And after that, this article goes to show 26 charts that show the differences between Black and white experiences. And also it includes some Hispanic statistics as well. So with that being said, I'm going to throw kind of this tough question out there because we want to be able to have, these genuine civil conversations about problems from every side of the problem. We want to address every viewpoint in our country, especially with how our country has become more polarized recently. We kind of want to bring people together instead of splitting further apart. We know politicians definitely polarize issues a lot. Let's just say one side likes red and the other side automatically dislikes the color red, and the other side might like water, and then the red side might decide, hey, you know what, screw water, we don't like that anymore. I mean, that's just sort of how it's become nowadays. Like when the Republicans take a stance, the Democrats are on the complete other opposite side, regardless of whether you can come in the middle or not, and it's same vice versa. So I'll start with two sides. One side, I'm gonna keep them nameless, but you guys can probably infer who they are. One side says a problem with a disproportionate amount of minority groups being stuck in this cycle of inopportunity is largely attributed to the groups of individuals which are not as determined to gather skill and knowledge through education to join the middle class. This side believes everyone has the same and equal opportunity to adapt to the system, like a work hard and you'll get there reasoning. This first side believes America's system is not racist because of this reason of individualistic choices. The other side attributes the problem to lack of solid infrastructure. Families without money can't afford resources to succeed and are stuck in a cycle. However, this side tends to focus on the system's problems and not as much on the individual and the group's determination or emphasis on education. The second side believes systemic racism is still prevalent in the US and still needs to be fixed, despite the Civil Rights Act. I say both sides do make solid cases for certain areas, but they do have their weaknesses as well. I think, in my personal opinion, I think the issue really lies somewhere in between, because I think it's a combination of some of these factors. What do you guys think about this? Feel free to speak about, both sides of this argument and whether you agree with me or not.
Yeah, I think that's really true. Both sides are kind of correct, not completely correct, but both sides, that does happen. Like one side does say, like, you give people resources and they have no motivation to go forward with it, and that's really true. But at the same time, the other side is also correct that they have to actually have the resources to go forward. And I think it's like a mix of both, really. And some places the imbalance is higher. Some places that they want to work hard, but they can't have the resources at all. And some places it's like a completely other way. Like it's just like kind of this different blend of different kind of aspects of it. And it is undeniable that systemic racism exists, because it's not just about going into the middle class. It's about literally being prosecuted or losing your life. It's actually fatal. So the problem is a lot more deeper than just trying to become or just get more money. It's definitely a lot more deeper than that.
To your point, I also agree that there is somewhere in the middle, it is a spectrum, and somewhere in the middle is where this lies. But there's a quote from Zootopia. I don't know if you remember. It was when the fox, Nick, he says, if the world is always going to see me as a cunning, sly fox, then there's no point trying to change who I am. And in a little bit, I see how that reflects here. Is I almost feel like because some people in impoverished areas with socioeconomic issues believe that the system has failed them, they've stopped believing in the system and trying to work within it. So it's like, I'll take an example. DeMar DeRozan grew up in Compton, NBA All-Star. He's very talented. He has a gift from God, a physical gift from God. And Compton is not the best place to grow up. There's gang wars, there's rivalries. But when he was born and the people within his community saw his talent, the community actually united together, and both gangs combined and put aside their differences to protect him. They protected him because they knew he was special, so he could make it out of there and do something with his gift. So it's that, why if they could do it for somebody else with a gift, why can't that belief be held for themselves? I feel like there's also a point where they know these resources are not coming. Like, the system has failed to provide these resources for them, and at this point it's like, what are we going to do about it? Like, we're stuck in this same vicious cycle. And yes, granted, I definitely agree, there's in certain areas you'll find, you can't work hard, or you've given the resources and they fail to work hard. That's where the system feels like the people have failed them, that they provide and they don't execute with what they're given. But I think we've almost reached a point where both sides believe they've failed each other, and they've given up on trying to help the other side, and we're stuck in this cycle where there's a lack of trust in the people, and the people have a lack of trust within the system.
Agreed. That's very well said. And I also want to add that while the former side mentioned that the problem lies with each individual's determination and motivation to work harder and get themselves to a better place, right? But I think it's just really ignorant and really arrogant to just assume that everyone in these lower socioeconomic ladders of society don't have the determination. I think everyone, regardless of what social class they're in or what economic class they are in, want to become more successful, regardless, right? And the root of the problem is that we're focusing on, one side is focusing on people who may not have the determination, and one side is focusing on the resources, right? But I think the real group of people that we should be focusing on, the people who don't have the resources but need them. I think that's something that both sides can probably agree on, right? There are people in the United States who don't have access to resources and don't have the means to better themselves and their family. And just the fact that we're not addressing this, and it's taken so long for this to even become like a current issue in today's society, is kind of sad, kind of disappointing. But within recent events in 2020, and hopefully with more coverage in the years to come, hopefully we can solve this problem, or at least start to bring change.
And to your point, I think you brought up I think it's a social responsibility. Those with privilege should use their privilege to help others. It's not that, because I'm gonna be completely honest, I was born into my privilege. I haven't I haven't earned anything that's been given to a warm house, so a warm roof over my head, food every night. I've been very blessed to receive all these things off birth. And I understand most people are not. And I think it's our social responsibility to, as we get to the age where we're able to provide, it becomes a responsibility to provide for those who may not be able to provide for themselves. I've been raised that way. My family comes from a place that's been raised that way. So I think it's my responsibility to carry on that train of thought.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think all of us can agree that we definitely have, based on the place where we live, we definitely have resources, we have safety, we have freedom, and we have like no racism affecting us, and that I think we should share that with everyone in need, and that's definitely important. And I think one big issue that most people have, like if you go to like a homeless shelter and see the people there, people have this like natural instinct to have like the just world bias, which is like kind of something that you would think like it's a term that's used to like people like want to think of everything that happens to someone else as justice. Like if this person has something wrong to them, then they deserve that. And that's actually kind of important because if you go to a homeless shelter, there are people that see those at least like one or two homeless people smoking, and they think, hey, these guys are homeless because they're just smoking and they're just using drugs. And that's the problem, because they're just applying that logic to everyone. And in reality, that's like less than 1% of the people in need. And we have to kind of like break that bias that people have and just try to help everyone in need, and just no matter what the problem is. And we can make the society a lot better place.
Yeah, I think going back to what I think all three of you addressed this. I think this country, the system, I think a lot of people really believe that it has failed them. A lot of people stuck in this cycle of poverty and underrepresentation. They've sort of given up in a way because they just can't seem to claw their way out of where they are. It's like running a 100-meter race and you start negative 50 meters. Like there's, no matter how fast you are, you can't catch up to everyone because of just how everything's structured. So I think to fix this, we as a community, kids, everyone in this world, everyone in this country, regardless of whether you're a politician or not, we have to start ourselves to make the change instead of constantly, waiting on other people to make it for us. Because I believe, if we don't, like as a people, this country is built on democracy, it's power from the people, for the people. So we as a people do not take steps to kind of lift these kids up out of their cycle, nothing's going to change, right? We need to teach these kids, we need to teach these families the importance of education at a young age, but also, provide them with resources and infrastructure and everything they could use to get to a place where they feel like, they're better off instead of being stuck in, the hood, slum, whatever you call it, being involved in, things that probably aren't too beneficial for your life, right? We have to get them out of this cycle, teach them, educate them, but also give them the resources, because I think a lot of people have this misconstrued view of poor people, and I think a lot of people also have it about homeless people. So I'll just give an example, right? Growing up, when I was very young, I used to think that every homeless person, just kind of, it was what they did to get there. But it never occurred to me that, maybe their parents were homeless and they were born out of that. Or maybe their parents didn't have a lot of resources and they were born into that cycle. And, for people like me and you guys, I think you guys can all agree, we live in Frisco, right? We can afford to take a lazy day off where we just hang out with friends and play on our Xbox, and watch YouTube. But some of these kids, right, they have to work their butt off every single day. They're working a job with school, right? So how are they supposed to focus on taking care of their brothers and their sisters while learning something from school, while working a job, just to be able to support their family, right? It's like a cycle that you just can't get them out of. So we really have to just help them, whatever way we can. Monetary support, fundraising, education, infrastructure. It can't happen without the people's help, the community's help. So that's basically, in summary, that's basically, something I really got out of this podcast today. And I just want to thank all of you guys for your opinions, everything. Thank you guys so much for coming out. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Saji. Thank you, Arnav. This is great to hear from you guys. I think we got a lot done, talked about a lot. So obviously, there's still going to be some racism in this country, but we have to try our best to fight this, actively fight this, actively help bring these people out of their injustices and their underrepresentation, and that seemingly never-ending cycle. We gotta fix that. So this is all we have for you guys this week. Thank you guys for tuning in to TXCC. We'll catch y'all next week.